shine on, harvest moon, up in the sky. I ain't had no loving since January, April, June or July. Snow time, tain't no time to stay outdoors and spoon. Shine on, harvest moon, for me and my girl.
Hi! Favorite trees? Well, that's a hard one. I guess when I was a kid growing up in Arkansas, it probably was loblolly pine because we had so darn many of them, and most of them were planted in straight rows because it was a timber area and we had lots of tree farms. I think maybe now in Texas, at least this part of Texas, my favorite trees are the live oaks. They are so huge and the branches are so cool and twisted, and they don't drop their leaves till early spring when the new leaves are ready to come on. So that gives us some leaves and some greenery through the winter, and it also gives me a fresh crop of leaves to compost in the spring when all of the other leaves have kind of composted already. I want to give you a kind of quick tour up the live oak tree because it's a really neat place to lie under and look up at the sky and look up at the limbs and look up at the power lines and the cable, and anyway, it's just a neat old tree. When I lived in Arkansas, I used to wildcraft a lot of herbs out in the forest. Here in Houston, I'd have to go a ways to get out of the city and get to a forest, and it's a completely different climate. So a lot of the wild plants and trees and shrubs that I'm familiar with don't grow here, and I'm not as familiar with the uses of the wild plants here in southern Texas. I used to grow a lot of my own herbs. About the only thing that I've managed to not kill here in Houston is rosemary, which doesn't grow really well, and of course peppermint, which grows like a weed. The problem I've had is I'm used to a climate that has 4 seasons, and one of them is a fallow season in the winter. And here in Houston, we have 2 growing seasons, a spring, early summer, and a fall, early winter growing season, with 2 fallow seasons in between. One in the summer when it's too hot and dry for anything to grow except maybe cactus, and a late winter season when it's a little bit cool, but we rarely ever get a frost. Anyhow, just haven't been that successful growing stuff. So now that I'm in the big city in South Texas, I've been buying a lot of my herbs at some of the magical shops, some of the herbarias, and a few of the other sort of health food shops. This is one of the more unusual herbs. It's called Job's Tears, and what I use them for is prosperity and good luck, and they also can be strung together like beads to make a necklace or rosary. This is a curandero necklace that Crazy Boy gave to me, and most of the beads are actually Job's Tears. Of course, nobody could get away without having a supply of white sage, and this is some of the sage that I have that's not tied together into bundles, so I can grind it and make stuff with it. I have a huge supply of lavender, probably, let's see, 1 pound. That's way more than I'm going to use in a long time. This is called Devil's Shoestring. I bought it from a little witchy shop down in Webster near Galveston, and it looks kind of like little sticks, but it's really good for entangling situations and people that need to be kind of entangled. Let's see. Orris root is really good as a sort of a filler, binder, If you're making incense, you use some of the herbs, some of the resins, and then you mix in a little orris root. This is some myrrh. Myrrh is basically a resin, and it's not very pretty looking, but you break off a little of it, grind it up into a powder. It makes a really nice incense. These are tonka beans, and I had a real time getting them. I finally ordered them online. They are also called wishing beans. Maybe not quite what Jack used in the Jack and the Beanstalk story, but they're really good in good luck charms and that sort of thing. As you can see, I've got lots more herbs than I have time to talk about. Okay, incense. I guess the kind of incense that I use most often is the stick incense. This is Spiritual Sky brand from New Zealand, and my wife Feather has a kind of a snail mail relationship with the Spiritual Sky folks because we order so much stuff from them. And it's really good, and it's not expensive even considering the shipping. I like stick because it comes in all sorts of flavors. It's already prepared for you, and all you have to do is light it and put it in a holder. You can also use the stick incense, at least I use the stick incense sometimes almost like a wand to direct power. Okay, the second kind of incense that I use is the loose incense, both herbs and resins, and to do that you need a burner to put it in. I just got this nice little ceramic burner from Thailand, and one of the tricks I learned from Crazy Boy is to use what I call rice ash, because that's really what it is. It's the ash from the rice hulls in Vietnam and in other Asian countries where they grow lots of rice. They actually use the rice hulls as fuel, and so then they have lots of ashes left over. I bought this from Hong Kong Market out in Bel Air, and 10 ounces of it cost a whole $1.99, and the package says powder incense powder pot, so I guess maybe rice ash doesn't exactly translate. Anyway, you fill your incense burner up with the rice ash, and you take your charcoal disc. This is Swift Light, and it has a little potassium nitrate on the outside, so it does light really, really quickly. Once you get the charcoal glowing hot with the rice ash, what you do is you bury your charcoal in the rice ash, and then you put the resin, and I'm using some elemental spirit blend from Soma Luna. You put the resin or the herb directly on it, and instead of burning the resin or the herb like if you put it directly on the charcoal, it heats it and vaporizes it. So you get a much more long-lasting incense, and it doesn't have that scorched, burnt sort of a smell to it. The third kind of incense that I use is a kind of instant incense or flash incense, and it involves something called Vesta powder. This is some of my homemade Vesta powder, and it's basically potassium nitrate and a little bit of charcoal. So I guess if you added some sulfur, you would have your basic gunpowder. But you take a little bit of that, and you take some of whatever herb or resin that you want in your incense. Today I'm using peppermint, not for any particular magical reason, but just because I've got a whole lot of it. And you mix the herb with the Vesta powder and you grind it up really, really well. And it doesn't take a whole lot of this stuff. A little bit really goes a long way. So, till next time, this is Dancing Rabbit wishing you peace.